Hello friends, it's Rain here. I decided to just grab the camera, put it on the tripod, and sit in front of it and talk to you today. I have nothing planned, but there was something on my mind. And I wanted to share this with you because I think a lot of people might be able to resonate with this. Lately, as I record this video, I've been feeling like a complete and utter failure. And if you follow my channel, you know that I try to spread awareness about abuse because that was my experience in my marriage and throughout my life. But I also try to show people hope that healing can happen and to promote self-awareness and education and positivity and to try to be the best person you can be because life is too short. But that doesn't make me immune to feelings of failure and low self-worth and low self-esteem, you know? And I would say over the last month, I have been feeling like a complete and utter failure, and I'm going to discuss that. I'm going to discuss a few things. I'll give you the backstory of how this all came to a head and the 3 things that helped me to overcome it. That happened all within 48 hours of each other, which is really cool. But what I'll start with is, and I'm going to be very transparent here, you know, we have a taboo in our society where people don't want to talk about their bowel issues, about their toilet time. And I'm not going to get into detail, don't worry. But I am going to be honest with you about what I go through on a daily basis. It's debilitating at times. So I'll start when all of this sort of started. Back in the early 2000s, I was working as an administrator at a trading firm in Montreal, in Quebec, Canada. It was a very high-stress job. I was working basically 3 people's jobs for 1 salary, and I convinced myself that I loved it, and I think I did really love it. I loved it. I loved the responsibility. I loved how the owners relied on me, but it caught up to me. You know, I started to get what I call daggers. And for me, daggers were when I had to go to the bathroom in the morning, it felt like someone had 2 daggers and they were stabbing me relentlessly from one side of my abdomen to the middle and back out. That's why I called it daggers. It was that kind of pain. And I had a lot of trouble going to the bathroom. And so I would get up really early in the morning to make sure I had enough time to go to the bathroom before I had to go to work. It was awful. And at some point, I just stopped eating solid food because I was afraid to eat. So I was on a liquid diet, as many call it, of wine and what was called Boost, this meal replacement can that you could buy at the pharmacy. And I always bought the chocolate one. And I was drinking 5 of those a day and half a bottle of wine when I got home at night. I'd pass out, wake up at 3 in the morning, spend 2 hours in the bathroom, drive to work to get to work on time, and continue 7 days a week. I got down to 89 pounds. I'm 5'3". That is way too skinny. And at one point, I had to be rushed to the hospital because I passed out at work. And when I got there, after I sort of came to or whatever, I was told I had a minor cardiac event, which I asked, do you mean I had a heart attack? They wouldn't confirm or deny. Okay. So I had all these tests done and I stayed at the hospital for a while. Thank goodness my co-worker took care of my dogs because they were actually at work with me. I brought my dogs to work with me because I was away from home so often. So she took them home and took care of them, thankfully. Oh my God, Patty. And so in the hospital, I saw a psychiatrist who diagnosed me with work-related burnout. And she prescribed antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications. Plus there was another one, I think it was a tranquilizer, and and antispasmodic, because the combination of all the 3 other meds could have caused me to have seizures. So, like, how dangerous is that? I didn't even question it. So I was on these meds. Eventually I went home with my dogs. I was off work for a while, and I started to feel better dagger-wise. I didn't have daggers anymore. Oh my God, so maybe I could start eating again. So I started eating again, and everything was okay. For about 6 years, I never went back to work, by the way. I've been on permanent disability since then because of the symptoms of the burnout, but also there was some issue with the company that hired me that was manipulating employees, and they got caught. Whatever, I'm not going to go into that, but I still deal with all of those emotional issues to this day. They never go away. So I was very grateful to be on the permanent disability. And so I'm at home and I'm like, I don't have daggers anymore. I can eat again. So I start eating, granted, not the best food, frozen dinners, convenience food, you know, because I'm zombied out by the medication anyway. I can't even imagine cooking a dinner. But at least I'm eating solid food again, and I was fine. But during this time, and remember, I was 89 pounds, the medications caused a metabolic disorder where my metabolism just really nosedived, and I gained a lot of weight. I went from 89 pounds up to 249 pounds, if you can imagine that, in 2 years. I was obese. It was unhealthy. My knees hurt, my hips hurt, my ankles buckled when I would walk. Like, I was just putting so much weight on my joints that they couldn't take it. You know, I had gained so much in such a quick period of time. But the medication was like telling me that it wasn't a big deal. And I knew I had gained weight, but I didn't realize how much, because it was gradual over the 2 years. And I remember at one point, maybe 4 years after the burnout, I decided to weigh myself, because I never did. And I saw how much I weighed, and I was shocked. But it took me a further 3 years to decide that I wanted to get off the meds and get myself healthy again in a natural way. And I'm not knocking meds, it just wasn't for me. But it served its purpose during that time. So I weaned off the meds. I actually called my P-doc, my psychiatrist. We called them P-docs at the time. She was against it. She said, you know, Rain, if you go off the meds, you'll be dead in a year. So I was like, okay, forget her. And I was under the influence that no doctor would help me. So I went on the internet. And if you're old enough to remember Usenet chat rooms, that's where I went. And I typed in how to wean off, and then I would put the particular medication in. And I found a surprisingly large amount of information out there. I didn't question it, I just did it. So it took about 7 months to wean off all the medication. And I felt like, okay, now I can start my life again. And I started to do research about how to get healthy, how to eat, what supplements I could take for depression and anxiety and all this stuff. You know, how can I make myself healthy again? And during this research phase, guess what? The daggers came back with a vengeance, to the point where I was crawling on the floor praying for the end. It was that bad. I couldn't take it anymore. So I ended up going to see a doctor, and the doctor just said to me, you have IBS. It was a general practitioner. He didn't even examine me. He just listened to what I said, and he said, you have IBS. And for those of you who don't know, IBS is irritable bowel syndrome. And it's a syndrome because it's not a disease. Guys, can you guys relax? Can you, everybody, go lie down? They're shaking my tripod. Benny, go lie down in bed. Go on, mister. Oh, that's a big stretch. You're a good boy. Ali Faye, go lie down. Come on. This is reality TV, friends. Okay, go lie down, sweeties. Good dogs. Okay, so where was I? IBS, right? Irritable bowel syndrome. Careful, Benny. He's going to knock down my tripod. Okay, go lie down, Benny. Go on, honey. Good boy. Okay. So you may see it shaking once in a while because every time they walk by, they push on it. So it's a syndrome because it's not a disease. It's an umbrella term for a bunch of symptoms that everybody has, but nobody has the same symptoms, okay? So you could have, and like I said, transparency. You could have chronic constipation, chronic diarrhea, or both, or acute, or sometimes. You could have major bloating. You could have terrible gas cramps. You can have nausea, chills, intestinal cramping, intestinal convulsions, intestinal, I'm going to think of the word in a second. Like I said, I haven't prepared for this. And you could have vomiting, heartburn, indigestion. It's everything that has to do with the digestion. And not everybody has the same symptoms. But what I was told at the time was that it is food related. It is always food related. But the doctor at the time told me, contractions, that's the word I was trying to remember, intestinal contractions. Okay, the doctor at the time told me it's always food related and you just have to live with it. And he gave me a referral to see a gastroenterologist, but the waiting list was 2 years. And when I sat in the waiting room that day, waiting for them to call me to give me the referral paper, I remember I started crying. It's like, I can't go through this for another 2 years. I can't. I can't. And the woman next to me, there was an older woman next to me, she saw me crying, and I was living in Quebec, so this was all in French. And she's like, qu'est-ce qui se passe? Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? You know, what's happening? Why are you crying? Pourquoi tu pleures? And I told her what happened. And she said, you know what? My cousin had that. She went on an elimination diet. She found out what food was hurting her and she stopped eating it and she got better. And I was like, thank you, Earth Angel. So I went home and I started looking up elimination diets. And I found a couple of places, and there was one that was from some kind of, I can't remember it now. It was a long time ago. We're talking, mid to late 2000s, that it was from some nutritional institution. So I figured it must be credible. And I followed it. It was a year. I did an elimination diet for a year. And at the time I thought, okay, well, it's the dairy. There were certain dairy foods that made it worse. So I thought I figured it out and I cured my IBS. Now at the time, I was still wanting to lose the weight. So I was exercising a lot and I was doing mindfulness exercises, which I didn't realize were mindfulness exercises at the time. I was just doing long periods of stretching. Not quite yoga, because I wasn't into that then, but just long stretching. And I was also taking supplements like fish oils and cod liver oil for mood and for depression. And I was taking passion flower tincture and drinking chamomile tea for anxiety. So I was doing all this other stuff for stress management, which I wasn't aware that I was doing at the time. So let's keep all this in mind. I was convinced that it was those certain dairy products. And I was like, I'm home free now. I'm good. So years go by, no more daggers, no more flare-ups. And because I'm continuing everything, right? And I'm eating well. I lost a lot of weight. I lost over 100 pounds. I was in good shape. And then I meet my late husband in 2013. And those of you who follow my channel, you know that my late husband and I were together for 12 years. And He gradually started to show his abusive side to me, emotionally and verbally abusive. And during the last 4 years of our marriage together, it escalated, got worse, more intense, more aggressive. And eventually, when I told him I wanted to separate, he took his life. So keeping that in mind. So when we were first together, everything was great. I had no more IBS flare-ups. I was happy. And I was like a cooking monster. I love to cook and bake, especially for somebody who enjoys it. We were both gaining weight because we were eating really well, but we didn't care. So we were eating so well. And then a couple of years into the marriage, he started to show signs of being abusive. It wasn't 24/7, I always say this. It just came and went. And I always forgave, always. Tried to make excuses. And there are plenty of videos on my channel that talk about why we stay. In fact, I have a playlist, and I'll put that upstairs in the cards to let you know if you want to look at the playlist of why we stay in emotionally abusive relationships or any kind of abusive relationship. But all of these reasons, most of them in any case, were reasons why I stayed. So as the years went by, during the last 4 years we were together, I started getting IBS flare-ups again. And I immediately thought it was food related because that's what the doctors had instilled in my head. So I was trying different things. I went on another elimination diet. It got to the point where I was only eating pasta maybe once a day. But the flare-ups were happening, but they were happening worse than before. I was in the bathroom in sheer hell between 2 to 4 hours every day. There were some points where I was screaming out in pain, like screaming in pain because I couldn't take it anymore. I fainted a few times while I was in there. I would vomit often. It was just awful, just awful. And then after those episodes would happen, I would have no energy anymore. It was like a wasted day for me. And I was just getting to the point where I was like, what's happening to me? I don't know what's going on with me. And then I finally got the courage up to tell my late husband that I wanted to separate. And after I was in chronic stress, okay, during that relationship, it was chronic stress. Walking on eggshells constantly, reevaluating my choices, trying to figure out where I went wrong. Why was it my fault? What we go through. If you've been through this, of course. Chronic stress, constantly in fight or flight, constantly emitting cortisol all through my body. Cortisol has its pluses, but chronic stress and overproduction of cortisol creates a lot of problems with your health. So I got up enough courage in the early spring of 2025 to ask him to move out. I wanted no more of this. I wanted to separate. I wanted to see how things would go while we were not together. Because in the back of my head, I thought, well, if he's away from me, maybe he'll finally realize what he's missing. So I was prepared for the worst, and the worst came. It was the most stressful thing I'd ever gone through in the next 6 months. But the retaliation started, little passive-aggressive things to keep me from sleeping, to create more expenses for me, to make me feel unsafe in my own home. That lasted for a couple of months, but I bared through it. I knew I had to go through it, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't do this before, because I didn't think I could handle that. But I did, and he finally got it, that I was serious. He agreed to move out, but he never really intended to. He made plans to take his life, and he did. He followed through in May of 2025. So that was another huge stressor on me. And the flare-ups got worse after that. But I was going through so much trauma and so much shock and stress that it didn't even register on my radar that I was having 4 hours in the bathroom every day of tremendous, unbearable pain and discomfort. It was just part of my life at that point, but I was fighting it every day anyway. So I was also having financial difficulties, which put more stress on me. So in the fall of last year, of 2025, I decided, okay, this has to stop. So I started to do some research, and I found a yoga video, and it's a funny name, but it got my attention. It said, yoga to poop and fart. And I thought, wow, okay, she has some guts here. So I started doing it. And naturally in the fall, because it's darker, my body clock usually wakes me up at 4 a.m. every day. It doesn't matter. I could be going to bed at 2 a.m. My body clock was waking me up at 4 a.m. So I was getting up at 4 a.m. and I would turn on my computer and I would start Tai Chi, because a friend of mine started Tai Chi and I wanted to try it too. So I would get up at 4 a.m. I would do 15 minutes of Tai Chi, which I loved. I would do that poop and fart yoga, which was only 10 minutes, but I felt like it was relaxing me, you know? And then I would do 30 minutes on my mini trampoline while I watched like a true crime documentary, because I had also read that jumping up and down on a trampoline with that motion, it helps not only your limbic system and it's good for you, but it helps digestion. So I started doing that, but I was still afraid to eat. So I was on a soup and bread diet. And so I figured, okay, well, I'm just going to eat soup and bread from now on. And that's okay, as long as I fill the soup with good protein. I had fish soup every day, lots of veggies, and I had whole wheat bread, lots of water, and I'll be fine. So I was good. The whole winter long, I was good, because I was still convinced it was related to food. So March rolls around, and if you follow my channel again, you know I broke my finger in March. This is what it looks like right now. I have the fake nails on. Love it. Getting back to normal. So what I called my daily maintenance, which was getting up at 4 and doing my stuff, I stopped it because I was in so much pain. All I wanted to do was sleep. And I was on pain medication as well until the surgery. And I had the surgery and I was in a cast and I couldn't move my hand at all after the cast was taken off. I still had pins in my finger. I have a video, I called it broken finger injury update or something like that. And I'll link that up in the cards as well if you're interested. It's such a popular video. I don't understand. People want to know about my broken finger. Thank you so much for caring. But wow, it's such a popular video. So I stopped all of my daily maintenance, which is the Tai Chi, the yoga, and the mini trampoline light jogging. And lo and behold, guess what happened? The IBS flare-ups came back. And I was still convinced it had to do with food. So I just, seriously, from this March up until a couple of weeks ago, I was on a soup and bread diet, and then eventually just a soup and broth diet. But I'll get to that in a second. It was about May, and I asked my doctor, could I start exercising again, you know? And he's like, yeah, it's the bones have fused together. Everything seems to be going okay. Just don't fall and don't lift heavy weights. I'm like, okay. So I was able to start my daily maintenance again, getting up at 4 and doing this and that. The pain was pretty much gone in my finger. I still have pain every single day, but it's tolerable. I don't have to take pain medication. It just it kind of burns, you know, because I do still have a wire ring in just above my middle knuckle to hold the finger together, and that's going to be in there for life. And that's where I feel the most. It feels so weird touching it. Anyway, so I don't have to worry about pain medication, but I started my daily maintenance again, and I started feeling better. Again, no more flare-ups, and I'm like, it's the soup and the bread. That's all I'm going to eat for the rest of my life, and I'm okay with that because I don't have to go through those 2 to 4 hours every morning of excruciating hell. So everything was going well, and then summer rolled around, right? Let me tell you something, friends. It's hard to fall asleep at 8 p.m. in the summertime when it's still light out. But I wanted to get in a good amount of sleep because I was getting up at 4, right? So that became almost impossible. So I decided, okay, I'm just going to go with my circadian rhythm. I'm going to fall asleep when it's dark. I'm going to wake up when it's light. And I'm still going to do my daily maintenance. It might not be in the morning. It'll be in the afternoon. I can do this. I've proven to myself I can do this. So that started happening. And the first morning I woke up at 6:30 in the morning. And of course I wanted to do my daily maintenance, but I was like, oh, wait a second. This is the time when I usually take the dogs out. I got to take them out. They have to go too, right? Take them out, take them for their walks. I have 5 dogs, so I do 3 walks, right? 2, 2, and 1, especially with my hand that I can touch my pinky and my ring finger, but I can't move my middle finger or this finger yet. So, and I can't pick things up and hold them. So walking the dogs is kind of difficult. I have to use my right hand. And anyway, I'm digressing. So I do that, and then I feed them, and I feed my cat, and I, do the chores like clean the litter, do the dishes, vacuum a little. By now it's 11 a.m. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do my daily maintenance because I'm the type of person who has the most energy in the morning and in the early afternoons. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm done. I'm done. I have 0 concentration. I can't do anything that requires concentration. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll start my work and I'll do my daily maintenance later. So I start my work and I'm doing my studying and this and that. 1 o'clock rolls around. That's the time when I usually let the dogs out again. I give them their little midday snack. And then I went back to work without even thinking because this was my routine. By 3:30, I'm starving. So I start making my dinner and I'm eating and I'm like, oh crap, I didn't do my daily maintenance. I can't do it now because I have such a slow digestion that I can't even imagine doing any kind of exercise after I eat my dinner. So I'm like, okay, I'll have to figure this out better tomorrow. I didn't have a plan. So the next day I woke up, it was a little later, took the dogs out, this and that, same thing. Didn't do my daily maintenance. And this became a routine where I didn't do my daily maintenance. Can you guess what happened? The flare-ups started again. And this was only a month ago or so. And I was just like, I felt like a complete failure. I felt like I can't take care of myself. I don't know how to take care of myself. Why can't I go to the bathroom properly? I'm starting to get scared to eat again. I'm only on broth and once in a while, some fish soup. I was just like, I'm a failure. And something in my head said, weigh yourself today. So I weighed myself. I had lost 15 pounds in the previous 5 weeks. And that was just, I wasn't even trying. That was ridiculous. That's unhealthy for me. And I knew it was time. I had to do something. I had to change something. I had to. This was really, as I record this, only a few weeks ago. I was afraid to eat. I had lost a tremendous amount of weight in a short amount of time without even trying. I felt like a complete failure because I didn't know how to be an adult. I couldn't figure out what was hurting me. My friends, my close friends will know that we've had discussions. Could it be this? Could it be this? Could it be that? They all know. They're all there with me throughout this journey. I tried everything. I was ready to give up. I couldn't live like that anymore. It was kind of like a rock bottom moment, you know? And then 3 things happened. 3 things happened. I had a discussion with one of my friends about the gut-brain relationship. And she recommended a book a long time ago, maybe a month and a half ago. And I had put that book on reserve at my library. I love my library because I live in a rural area. They send it out to me for free with a prepaid package to send it back. Oh, I love my library. So I reserved it, but I didn't get it. So there was another book called Trust Your Gut. And it was specifically talking about the gut-brain connection with regards to IBS. So I was like, I'm reserving that. So I was able to get that at the electronic library, which I don't normally like to do because I'm a book reader. But I was so desperate. And I read through the whole book in one day, and I started to understand that IBS can be triggered by food, but also by stress. And it was like eye-opening for me. And it all started coming back. The stress from the job in the early 2000s. The stress after I came off the anti-anxiety medication in the late 2000s. Yes, I did the elimination diet and thought maybe it was the dairy. But at the same time, I was doing stress management and I was taking supplements for anxiety. The chronic stress that I was under during that abusive relationship. Trying different eating styles and reducing all of these foods didn't help. But every time I did my daily maintenance, it helped. So I started to think about that, and I learned more about how the brain and the gut brain are connected through what's called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is a nerve that runs from your brain to your gut through your spine, or along your spine. And it's the communication highway between the brain and the gut. So the brain is giving information constantly to the gut through the vagus nerve. And when you're under chronic stress, you're releasing a lot of cortisol. That's a nice big stretch, Benny, but can you go lie down, honey? And when you're releasing, he's knocking over my tripod here. When you're releasing a lot of cortisol, it's basically cutting out the function of your digestion. Because when you're in constant fight or flight mode, which is what happens when you have a perceived threat, you're releasing a lot of cortisol. And it's the cortisol that is stopping the functioning of your digestion, because when you're in fight or flight, your body is shutting down things so that you can survive. And a lot of the times we go into fight or flight over perceived threats, right? So in my case, when I would start to feel a little bit of a pain, or maybe I would feel some chills starting, or the nausea coming on, I knew what was coming next. And I would go into a complete panic, knowing that for the next 2 to 4 hours, I would be in pure hell. I didn't want to go through it. It was dread. So my panic would cause the fight or flight response to start. And my brain would start telling my gut to stop functioning, shut everything down. But at the same time, everything was so messed up that whatever I thought, or my brain thought, was toxins or poisons going through my system, I had to release them. At least this is how I'm understanding it. My body was trying to release every toxin available, this end and that end, but my brain kept telling my gut to stop functioning. So it was just this cycle of messed up messages, and my vagus nerve was just unhealthy and just needed to be reset. It was just, I learned all this through reading. So the first thing that happened was that I gained knowledge about stress being a trigger for IBS. And in my case, because I had been told for so many years by so many doctors that it's always food related. This was like a light bulb moment for me. My IBS was not food related. Yes, there are some foods that I know trigger it, but for the most part, it makes complete sense as to why it's triggered by stress. So that was the first eye opener. The second eye-opener was that I switched my mindset and I said, you know what? It doesn't matter what I eat. And my friends will smile at this because we've had many discussions. I don't know what it is. I've eaten this. I don't eat this, and then I eat it and it hurts me. And this, I don't know what to eat anymore. I'm afraid to eat. They know what I've said over the years, and recently especially. So my mindset was the second thing that happened. And this all happened in the 48 hours I'm telling you about, when I learned about the stress. And then I changed my mindset and I said, you know what? If I'm going to have flare-ups anyway, I may as well eat what I want. I may as well be happy, because I'm a foodie. And when you take away my food, not happy. What's the point if I can't enjoy certain things, right? I'm not saying I need to be indulgent, but, you know, a gal's got to eat. So I decided I would eat whatever I want. And something happened the month before this also. I had made a budgetary mistake where I thought I had $500 more than I did, but I didn't. So in order to pay all of my bills, I only had about $140 for groceries for an entire month for myself. And that's not much these days. I managed. You can manage, but with someone who has IBS, you have to really be careful what you eat. So instead of eating badly, I went without, and I only ate soup, and I lost the 15 pounds in 5 weeks. Did I mention that? I think I mentioned that. So I was just like 2 days away from my next little bit of income coming in. And I thought, okay, you know what? Instead of going to the store with a shopping list that says ingredients for soup, ingredients for bread, I'm going to the store with a shopping list for ingredients for pizza, for a nice fresh pasta, for chicken salad sandwiches, for, you know, breakfast tacos, nothing unhealthy, but things that I love to eat that I knew were healthy, with good protein, some healthy fats, vegetables, and whole grains. And this is what I shopped for. And this was my mindset change. And I had pizza for the first time in a long time. I should show you a picture of this. I put it up on my other channel, Rain's Kitchen and Garden, but I'll show you a picture of it. It was just the most delicious pizza I've ever had in my life. So I say that now. But, you know, that mindset of like, it's going to happen anyway, I'm going to accept it. So that was the second thing. The education was the first. The mindset shift was the second. And the third was just randomly coming across a quote that said, you are not a failure. Your routine is failing you. And I thought about that because, remember, I was getting up at 4 a.m. and I was doing my self-maintenance. And when I wasn't getting up at 4 a.m, I wasn't doing my self-maintenance. And I was coming down so hard on myself, telling myself I was a failure, that I didn't have the motivation or the willpower to even take care of myself. It wasn't me who was failing. It was my routine that was failing me. So that I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that I had to work on this. I had to get up at 4 a.m, and I had to do this routine that was working for me, no matter what. So even in the summer, I put extra curtains on my windows. My house is black at night. I turn off everything. Power bars, everything. By 7 o'clock, there's nothing on anymore. Nothing. So I was able to, after a few painful mornings of only having a couple hours of sleep until I got my routine back, I'm up at 4 a.m. now, doing my daily maintenance again. I do now a half an hour of Tai Chi, half an hour to 45 minutes, because that's mindfulness, that's stress management. I do my poop and fart yoga for my digestion. I've added a 15-minute yoga routine for resetting the vagus nerve to help with that communication between the brain and the gut. I've added a 6-minute meditation, during which I put a hot face cloth over my hand to warm up my muscles. And then I do my hand exercises every morning now. And then I do 30 to 45 minutes on the mini trampoline, watching some true crime documentaries, and just very light movement. And this is maintenance. This is not for cardiovascular health or for strength training. This is purely for daily maintenance of my digestion. And the flare-ups have stopped. I'm eating mostly everything that I like to eat. I've upped my water intake to 10 to 12 cups of water a day to keep the plumbing going. I'm doing my daily maintenance every day. And at the same time, in the afternoons, I do some strength training and some cardiovascular exercise to keep myself healthy as I age. And the thing is, these three things sort of came together at the same time to give me that light bulb moment where, as I record this, I'm 58 years old. My body isn't a 20-year-old body anymore. Things change, things age, things slow down. This 1.5 to 2 hours every morning is not negotiable. Health at any cost, it's not negotiable. Even if I only get 2 to 3 hours sleep, I'm okay with that as long as I do my daily maintenance every day. And when I do that, I find I have more energy. I have more motivation to, follow my passions. I'm not wasting time scrolling and watching the internet anymore. Some days I get a little depressed and I'll do a binge watching of Supernatural or something like that, but that quickly passes. And I'm feeling so much better. I have gained some weight back, I'm happy to say. Thank you, pizza. But really, I'm feeling more healthy than I have in a very long time. And it's due to educating myself. It was due to having a mindset shift. And it was due to just stumbling upon that quote that said, it's not you that's failing, it's your routine that's failing you. And it made so much sense. What also was failing me was the medical community. Way back in the 2000s, nobody associated stress with IBS. It was food related. It had to be. But that's not necessarily so. I didn't know. I didn't know that I had to learn about it. How would I know that? I stumbled across it because one of my friends mentioned the gut-brain connection. And I found a different book on that. So I learned about it. I got educated because what I was told was failing me. My routine was failing me, so I changed up my routine to something that worked. And my own mindset was failing me because I was telling myself that I was a failure. So all of those things put together, and all of this, my gosh, 20 years or so, more than 20 years of suffering through IBS flare-ups and daggers. Finally, I've been able to figure out how to manage that, and life is feeling very good right now. So I hope that resonated with someone in some way. Maybe get you thinking about what you don't know about a condition that you have, or maybe that you need to change your mindset that you're not a failure, that your routine needs to be tweaked. Maybe there's something that you're trying to achieve that you feel you're failing at. Maybe you're trying to lose weight. Maybe you're trying to cut out sugar. Maybe you're trying to cut out alcohol. I was trying to do that too for the longest time. I didn't have the tools to do it. I didn't have the routine to do it. I just thought I was a failure, that I was too weak. It had nothing to do with that. It was my mindset and it was my routine. But I can talk about that in another video, about how I cut out all the alcohol and the sugar in my life. Most of the sugar. But think about it, maybe there's something that you've been trying to do, create a good habit, or release a bad habit, or release some toxic people from your life. Maybe it's your routine. Maybe you have to think about changing up your routine, finding something that works for you. Because you're not the failure. Your routine is the failure. You're not the failure. Your mindset is the failure. And you're not the failure just because you don't know any better. So, like I said, I hope that someone today can resonate with that. Leave me a comment. Love to see your comments, friends. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye.